Yes, hello. I see we have a relatively light audience here. Just to say that I know it's a very networking-oriented show. I have been at it, I remember 20 years ago. I was a network engineer, a software designer. And along the time, I have moved in my career to start look at the reason why we build a technology and what is the impact that we make with the service providers in our world, either as consumers or as for businesses. And that is the reason why I'm here today, is to really look at the opportunities that service providers have as they look at their business. So we have the mobile business and we have the B2B enterprise business. If you look as an aggregate at the revenue over the last few years of all the service providers from the B2B segment, we actually see that, in fact, the established business of connectivity services, of communication services, it's relatively flat. It's the pink area in this chart. And the new opportunity for growth comes from IoT, comes from cloud, and comes from security. And that's where we need to focus as a community, and that's where I would like to see if we can work together to identify opportunities for revenue growth and how F5, where I am, can help such service providers. It is a very large market, right? If we look at the connectivity services in 2018, was about $350 billion. All those revenues will grow to about $400 billion by 2024. So when we say that, in fact, the new services will represent 13% of the overall market by 2024, it is a significant dollar value, a significant opportunity for service providers. So what is really the topic? How are we going to look at this? From where we sit, in fact, we look that applications are really part of our day-to-day lives as consumers, but they are absolutely critical and very important for enterprises. F5 does every year a report interviewing and analyzing all the multiple enterprises, medium and large enterprises, to understand what is the state of the application deployment in their environments. And what we see, in fact, that 98% of those organizations are saying that applications are essential or critical to their success as a business. They represent the capital that an organization has now and actually going forward as well. And by 2023, we expect to have 3.7 billion applications across multiple enterprises. And very, very important is to really understand and to improve the application experience. A lot of the conversations here that we have from a service provider and networking perspective are looking as to how do we transition from a hardware-based to virtualized functions or container-based functions. That is a form of application. It's transforming something that we typically create as we have created as networking equipment more into the software world, more looking at it as an application. But there is also an opportunity with that as you are achieving and developing learnings to take those learnings and turn them into opportunities to help enterprise customers go along the same journey and provide them an easier way to address the complexity that they see as well in managing applications. So I thought I would start with an example from Uber in terms of what it really takes to achieve the experience that Uber has with their application. So first of all, it's a very complicated picture, but a few things that I want to point out is that it is built on microservices. So we have moved away as an industry from building applications as a monolithic environment. So there are multiple services, microservices, one for pricing, one for routing. And the other thing is also that they have to exist and they have to serve multiple regions. So a very dispersed geographical deployment, and in the same time, you have to have backup data centers and multiple data centers where the application has either services that are running or they have to be duplicated for availability. If we go next and you think of the user experience, who are the users for an Uber application? Are either the drivers or the the taxi drivers or the users, the consumers. And in order to really have access to the application, the first thing that has to happen is to make sure the application is secure and nobody can have a denial of service attack or attack the application, because if we do that, then we don't really have any access to the application. So we need application security. We also need a load balancing function that is going to distribute the requests from multiple users to really be able to process it, given the constraints we have in the infrastructure and the processing time. So that's another function that we need in order to create this user experience for application nowadays. And even more, as we have microservices interacting over multiple APIs, we need to secure those APIs for the same reasons. So suddenly we realize that, in fact, it is very complex. So first of all, we have to network all these locations where the applications reside. We need to ensure the security of the application access and as well the APIs. We need to make sure the application gets updated and distributed across all these environments. We need to make sure that we load balance the requests so that we ensure application performance. And it is very, very complex for an enterprise to do that. So let's look as to what this complexity means, in fact. Most of the enterprises are saying, yes, it is complex. Today, they are deploying, 22% of them are deploying services only on-prem, and 6% of them are deploying services, application service in the cloud, only in the cloud. The remaining part are really enterprises that deploy these application services in a hybrid environment, in the hybrid cloud, with a mixed environment of public cloud, private data centers, edge, for example. And most of them need these application services. So for instance, just to point the security part, 93% they said, yes, we need, and we are deploying those security services. And it's possible that the large enterprises have more capabilities to do it in-house, and they can purchase and manage all this infrastructure by themselves. But for the medium enterprises or smaller enterprises, as they embark as well in this digital transformation, it is very complex, very difficult to achieve. And that is where the opportunity for service provider exists. If we look back at that 13% of the $400 billion opportunity, part of that means actually we need to develop new services to bring to market to target the needs of enterprises. And that means, for instance, starting with the networking of the applications. We have heard over this conference that it's not just site-to-site connectivity needed anymore. We need to actually network applications to make sure that we take some of that complexity away from duplicated IP addresses and interconnecting deeply into the application located, for instance, in Amazon, in AWS. So offering a managed application networking service on top of the connectivity service, it's a way to augment revenue and remove complexity from enterprises. The second part of type of managed services is to deliver managed application services like DNS, load balancing, and as well to evolve into managing Kubernetes environments for enterprises as well. And on top of that is the need or the opportunity for service providers to offer managed application security service with denial of service, DDoS mitigation services, anti-bot, web application firewall services. Quite complex to manage, and we have to look at it as being above, on top of the network security that most of you have seen, and we have seen discussions here in terms of IPsec and MACsec. This would be at the application security level. And those functions, in fact, what they do, they provide those protections to the users as the users connect to the applications, or protections between multiple microservices of an applications, between multiple locations. So why F5? Well, F5, our mandate and vision is to really secure, deliver, and optimize applications and APIs everywhere. No matter where the application resides, we should be able to provide those functions. And that is the journey that F5 has started many, many years ago. So what does it mean to the service providers in terms of what they can actually do with this capability? If we look at the addressable market, basically we are saying that with this managed application services, a service provider can increase their addressable market by a total of $30 billion in 2025. And it's a large number, it is global, and it is segmented by security, application networking, and application delivery, and you see the numbers. And it also aligns with the strategy of growth that we have seen in service providers, which are focusing on growth in security, growth in cloud, and in particular to enable hybrid cloud and to enable enterprises to move their assets and to interconnect into public cloud providers or into other kind of cloud providers such as IBM or Oracle that provide specific functions. And the third component of the evolution and the strategy of many service providers, it's really related to the standardization and how to reduce cost, how to bring to market faster those services, and is to automate services to be based on cloud-based infrastructure when they offer these services. With F5, we have understood this quite some time ago, and we have had discussions with many service providers. The complexity of bringing a service to market, which is based on hardware, software, it's quite high, and we have seen this at connectivity level, but we also see it at services which are above the connectivity at the application layer. And what we have done is really created what we call a F5 distributed cloud, which is a SaaS platform, a global SaaS platform that has these functions instantiated in multiple POPs across the world with a network that it interconnects. This can also be deployed more in a private environment for a service provider, and we have some examples of that. But the role of this SaaS platform is to be able to provide to a service provider already cloud-based functions that are easy to consume. So just the service provider doesn't have to create the service. So basically, everything what we have seen in terms of the needs of an enterprise application, such as multi-cloud networking, load balancing, DNS, or multiple types of security functions, they can all be provided from this cloud-based platform. That is a tremendous advantage to service providers because it reduces the time to market. Instead of going through the new service introduction cycle that we know it takes between 9, 12 months, maybe 6, we can achieve this now in 3 months because the service is completely made as a SaaS, and we also have, we enable the managed service provider to interact with this platform through an MSP portal that would say, I'm only seeing my customers, and I can control those customers in terms of configuring their environment, in terms of seeing what is happening and having reporting, and as well interacting with my traditional OSS and BSS systems, or actually with more modern ones, which are based on Terraform and Ansible, open source management and automation platforms that are really, really useful for the evolution of the OSS and BSS environment for the carriers. So we believe that with this structure, we can absolutely help service providers accelerate their time to market and be able to take part of that market opportunity that we have seen before. So I'm not going to go through the details of all these security functions. I would love if you want to come to our booth and we are on the hallway and we can have a deeper conversation. What I wanted to emphasize, in fact, is that there is a lot of complexity in presenting one of these functions. So for instance, if we talk about web application firewall, in fact, you need to be able to provide, and we provide signature-based authentication. We protect against top 10 security concerns that exist. And we also identify threats based on behavior. And that is where we see the evolution of these security functions in integrating artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to identify what is the difference between a robot versus a human being in terms of how they behave in interacting with the applications. And by applying those controls, you actually both mitigate the attacks on the application, but you also improve the user experience because you realize that this is a user that it's actually a legitimate user and I should let it go versus somebody who is actually just an automated bot attack on the enterprise. So significant investment and thinking that we have done and acquisitions to really develop these capabilities, best in class, and to take the learnings that we have had over so many years in creating these functions for enterprises in our products and bring them into a distributed SaaS cloud-based model. So I will conclude with one example, actually one more slide. But I wanted to put this into the context of one particular use case. We have engaged with a major service provider in Europe for quite some time. And in fact, from the beginning, they wanted to move away from the model of creating a managed service based on software or hardware. They wanted to adopt a cloud platform. And they wanted to be global because they wanted to address 4 countries across Europe and other geographies as well. They wanted to be able to augment their offers to start with a WAF service, but include anti-bot, include denial of service attacks, mitigations, and as well evolving into anti-fraud. Everything what you need in order to make that application really perform very, very well. Moreover, what we have seen until now being available to large enterprises, we see now having the need to offer it to the medium and smaller enterprises, which really makes that big market opportunity. And that was a significant objective that this service provider had. And to achieve the right price points for which the enterprises would be willing to pay, they needed this cloud platform. So really, our solution is offering them the platform on which they are going to offer their managed services. So they will have the management of this platform. They will have people that will be able to configure the services for their enterprise customers, to monitor the performance, to provide reports and billing, what typically a managed service provider does. And through this, they expanded their addressable market by about $1.7 billion. And it is not just about providing the technology. It is about providing the help that will take a service provider from the idea to actually generating revenue. And in the way we engage with these service providers, we actually work with them in a data-driven way to understand their business planning and to say, yes, the addressable market is going to be, as an example, $1.7 billion over the next few years. It is anchored in that deep expertise that we have in terms of understanding who are the enterprises, what they buy, in putting our knowledge from selling directly to enterprises to the use of the service providers. In addition to this is enabling them to take advantage of the cloud platform and bring the services to market much faster using automation tools, using scripts. So therefore, it's very, very easy to take a service to market instead of 9 to 12 months. It will only take a few months. And as well, support with training and sales material, because in the end, the success that we have, it's only achieved when the service provider has success in selling to its customers. So with that, I thank you for the attention, and I want to see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see if we have questions from the audience here or from remote.